Hi, and welcome to the Changing Perspectives podcast, the show where we discuss a variety of topics including grief, parenting, health and wellness, and relationships. Join us and explore a number of changing perspectives. We're your hosts, Jenni and Josh Brennan. Why are you already giving me an eye roll?
Because you breathe really loudly.
I do?
Yes. Now that I've pointed it out, people are going to shut us off.
No, they're not. Oh,
They
your
really
phone's
are.
ringing.
Sorry. I was comforting a friend.
Yeah, but it's still going.
It is, because I can't shut it off because it's my hair timer. I'm currently coloring my hair.
Jenni is
Multitasking.
currently coloring her hair.
Mm-hmm.
But we're recording on a Friday night. Do we normally record on Friday nights? I feel like this is kind of new. A new day we're recording.
I don't really know.
I don't know. It was a long day. It was a good day. Jacob had his elementary school spring concert.
What does this have to do with anything?
I'm saying people like to hear our back and forth. Listen, I think that's true, but you don't want to shout out the fact that Jacob had his keyboarding concert today?
No, I'm not ready to talk about it.
Why?
Because we only have one more of these concerts, and then he's done with elementary school.
That seems like the start of another episode.
Yeah.
Another parenting episode.
I'm not ready.
Okay. Well, we are going to talk about a very cool topic tonight. This episode, a topic that's kind of special to both of us. Before that, I wanted to say, don't forget to like us, review us, and follow us, everybody. We have some exciting stuff coming up for you, Changing Perspectives fans. If you didn't catch it already, check out Pop Culture Cosmos on YouTube. I hung out with my friend Gerald over there, and we did a segment on Game of Thrones, mostly Game of Thrones. We talked a little bit about pulp culture.
Pulp culture?
That's what I said.
Is that like oranges?
It's like... And
grapefruits?
Yeah. Exactly. See, your brain went to fruit. My brain went to Quentin Tarantino.
Pulp Fiction?
Yeah. No, so I hung out with Gerald. We talked death in Game of Thrones, the future for Game of Thrones fans, how to cope with the fact that the show's over and all that. It was a lot of fun. We talked for about 30, 40 minutes. It's on YouTube, and the audio will be released in podcast form at the end of the month. So that was fun. Another shout out, we have, we're making friends all over the podcast universe, so to speak. And we've been chatting with some cool guys that run the Shut Up and Dad podcast. And you'll hear their ad being run on our episodes as of late, and I'm going to be on their show too in July sometime as a guest. So lots of fun stuff coming up. Do you have anything to tell our fans?
No. Was I supposed to?
No.
Okay.
That's it.
No, I don't have anything fun coming up. Just teaching 4 classes, lots of patience.
Yeah. Busy weekend ahead of us.
Mm-hmm.
As
always
usual.
But I think. Well, no, never mind. I was going to say that comes to an end soon, but not really.
Yeah.
Never mind.
Well, anyway, that housekeeping sort of is over, and we can go into the show proper now. So what are we going to talk about today, Jenni? Jenni's not excited about this. You are and you aren't, because it could be controversial. Probably our first real controversial episode.
Yeah, and I pre-becoming a parent, or even before my child was in 2nd grade, I was always I would have been on the other side of this issue for sure.
You were actually.
Like passionately, I would have been on the other side of the issue, and so I feel like probably a lot of social workers are on the other side of the issue. So I kind of feel like I might get my social work card taken away.
What's that about, do you think? Do you want to say what we're talking about?
Youth. We're doing another Myths About episode. This one is about youth tackle football, which we teased maybe 15 episodes ago.
Yeah, it was a while ago.
And I've been putting it off and putting it off.
We've been a little scared about it.
I've been kicking the can.
Yeah.
Because it's a hot button issue, especially here in Massachusetts, where they are currently trying to ban tackle football at the youth level. So really anything younger than high school. So
7th grade, actually.
So Everett has an itch. So it's sort of a hot topic right now, but also it's a topic that is really important emotionally to our family because our boys love football, and football has been really crucial for both of them. And so as a mom, I feel really emotionally connected to and invested in sort of the benefits of youth tackle football. And as sort of a social worker concerned with sort of the well-being of children, I get where people on the other side of the issue are coming from. So I never want to sort of be in a place where I'm offending anybody. And
we definitely try not to do that on this
rules.
show either, of course. But so you think it's about like a child endangerment piece as social workers?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Sure.
Well, yeah. So we're talking about myths about youth football, as Jenni already mentioned. We haven't actually done a myths about in a few episodes, so I'm glad we're doing another one. And as Jenni said, yes, it's a huge part of our family, not only our past, but our future too, because our kids, they're going to keep playing youth football.
Right.
For years to come. I played as a kid. Actually, it was the first organized.
I did not.
Jenni did not. It was the first organized sport I played. Actually, I started out when I was in 4th grade. I want to say I played for 4 years, youth football. Actually, the same league that our boys play in. I absolutely loved it. For me, it was something I was never really big into sports, as we have talked about in previous episodes. I'm a big music guy. I put on makeup first in theater because I was on theater before I ever put a helmet on, right? But football for me became the sport that I really enjoyed. It was sort of my entry into sports, and I fell in love. I think that fed my football fandom too. It was actually starting out as a player. I think I was a player first before as a fan. Anyway, so it meant a lot to me, and I knew that I wanted our kids to play.
And I knew I did not.
And you knew you did not. So let's tell everybody what happened, I guess. Do you want to tell?
So let's see. And we didn't do any prep for this. Josh did prep, but I
did a little prep.
So this is sort of based on an article that came out recently about sort of myths about youth tackle football. And I specifically asked Josh to not share it with me. So I don't actually know what these myths are. So you're getting a sort of real authentic response from me for this episode. So you and I also didn't talk about our history getting into youth football.
Right.
The way I remember it is we were at, I think, a baseball fundraiser, and other parents were talking about flag football, and even flag football I was concerned about. I was concerned about concussions and what it was, and all the parents sort of talked to me about sort of safety, and that conversation also talked a lot about tackle football. And I was like, no, I'm concerned about concussions. I don't think it's safe. I'd never read an article about it, never was in football, never had family members in football, just kind of had developed that thought.
Although we kind of fell in love over football.
We did. We would go to football games, right, in the marching band.
Yes.
But I never really thought like, oh, I want my kids to play this. It always seemed really violent.
And I remember it was a big part of us growing up in our relationship
Friday
together.
night football games.
Well, that and hanging out with your parents on Sundays watching football.
That's true.
That was a lot of fun.
But so it was never something I envisioned my kids actually playing. So they were playing baseball. However, in our kids, so it was our oldest, and so he must have been in 1st grade. It must have been the end of his 1st grade. When could he start playing second? So he
3rd.
So
it was 3rd grade.
It was 3rd grade.
So it was the end of his 2nd grade year, I guess.
And he was playing baseball, and I was adamantly opposed to tackle. I was saying it's too rough. It's not safe. Blah blah blah. Then we had some really rough and I would say violent baseball games, where like kids got their teeth knocked out, concussions, and I started to think, oh my gosh, like at least in football, these kids are going to be padded and they're going to have full helmets and full face masks. Meanwhile, here in baseball, we've got 2nd and 3rd graders lobbing balls at each other's faces, getting teeth knocked out because someone slides into home with their cleats on and hits them in the face. Like, maybe football is a little bit safer. And then there was some parent drama, and there was like a fist fight at the field. And I said, I remember the day, and then coaches got coaches and parents got suspended. And I remember in that moment, as we were leaving the field, I said, you know what? If he wants to play football, he can play football. Because the undercurrent here is that our oldest was also begging us to play football. And I kept saying no.
Yeah. So
it was that moment, that night, when there was like huge injuries, fist fights, I don't really think fists were actually thrown.
No.
But there was people having to break them up.
The adults?
The adults.
Yeah.
People had to step in. You were not one of the ones that was going to throw a fist. No. You were one of the ones breaking them up.
I was breaking it up.
And so in that moment,
thank you for clarifying.
In that moment, I remember specifically turning to you and saying, I'm all set. Like, we cannot just be all in with baseball. Let's give football a try if he really wants to. He's going to be fully padded. He wants to do it. And it can't be as crazy as this nonsense.
No.
So no offense to the local baseball league, but y'all lived it. You know what happened.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And so that was our foray into football.
Well, and fast forward to today, real quick, both of our boys, football is their favorite sport.
Absolutely.
Hands down. They play multiple sports. They're three sport athletes. Jackson, I guess, was a 4-sport athlete this year with track, but yeah, multiple sports, but football takes the cake, hands down. And I will say, knock on wood, I guess, which I actually am right now. Still the worst injuries we've seen in our life as parents, sports parents, have been baseball. Is that correct?
And flag football.
And flag. Yeah.
I've seen more broken bones in flag football.
Right.
Than I've seen more ambulances to kids on our team than at flag football than I have in regular football, in regular tackle football. Because they're not padded. They're still running full speed. They're not knowing how to take a hit. They're still making hits. The one a few weeks ago, I don't actually think he broke his leg, but he had to be taken out in an ambulance because he had the ball. Flag is non-tackle, non-touch. You're supposed to grab the flags. But when you've got 6th and 7th graders running full speed down the field, guess what? Sometimes they collide, and they collided in the end zone. Mm-hmm. And then there was an ambulance on the end zone. Yeah. Not the first time I've seen it at flag.
Right. And then we've had in our parenting life, we've had ambulances and bloodshed.
Yes. And our biggest injury
at baseball.
Well, yes, for sure. I think the biggest sort of traumatic injuries where there's been screaming and crying in those moments where you remember, those have not been tackle football.
No.
Not to say there haven't been injuries, but
of course,
I'm talking about sort of the grand scheme of things here. For our family and for our experience, tackle football has by far been the safer it's been safer than baseball. I was trying to think about basketball. I don't think there's been any serious injuries that we've seen in basketball.
Let's put out that disclaimer. So we are not concussion experts. We are not even, I wouldn't even call us football experts. We are sharing experiences of our family. And that's it.
Yes, for sure.
And then we're going to share the myths versus fact article or document that I have. Actually was published by the NFL, so it's clearly biased. But we're going to put that disclaimer out there. We're not disparaging anybody's personal feelings at all about the topic.
Absolutely, because the undercurrent running under all of this here in Massachusetts is also my kind of belief that you do you, I'll do me. Yep. Unless my kids or your kids are in immediate danger, stay out of my business. Kind of like our paddleboard parenting episode, our last episode, give each other space. Exactly. Steer clear of everybody. So I have a big problem with the state trying to tell me that, letting my kid play football it somehow makes me a bad parent.
Exactly.
But it's still okay for my kid to play baseball or flag football or soccer.
Or girls lacrosse that don't have any headgear.
Or the other part of this is that a lot of the bigger injuries we've seen have been just when kids are being kids on the playground, on a trampoline, on the monkey bars, riding a bike, just fooling around with each other, falling off the ropes in gym class. These have been where we've seen bigger injuries. So we can't put kids in a bubble. And so part of this is I have a problem with people also telling me how to parent.
Yes.
Because what football has done for for our kids, emotionally, mentally, has been life-changing for them.
And we're just going to share that information. That's
right.
We'll go through this myths versus facts.
Because I'm also going to say to you, you do you. If you feel like youth football is too bad for my kid, too scary, fine, then don't do it. I'm not telling you to do it.
Listen, nobody knows your kid better than you.
Except your kid.
That's true. I think we should take our first break on that note.
Already?
Yeah.
Okay, this is new. I'm adjusting to the break.
Okay. We will be right back.
What's up, everybody? My name's Tim from the Shut Up and Dad podcast, and I hope you're enjoying this show. If you're looking for some laughs after you finish listening to this episode, come check out Shut Up and Dad. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and your favorite podcast platform by searching Shut Up and Dad, or simply head to our website, shutupanddad-podcast.com, where you can listen to episodes, read our blog, and find links to our show. That's shutupanddad-podcast.com.
All right, we're back. Thank you guys for listening to our ad. I just wanted to say before the break, I think we had a couple of cell phone funky interruptions with the cell phone frequency, and you could hear it in the background, so I apologize.
Well, I had to keep my cell phone on, so I knew when my hair was done, so it's my fault.
Well, I think one of the cell phone things was mine, so I apologize.
Okay.
It's usually yours, though.
It is. No, usually I shut mine off.
Well, I asked people to comment because I shouted out, I teased about this episode, and I said if you've got a comment or question, and you want us to read it over the air, put it up on Instagram, and I haven't. I just wanted to make sure I could see it. So
gotcha.
That's all.
Okay.
Alrighty. Yes. So should we jump into the myths?
So glad we left the water bowl out for the dog.
Dish.
Yeah. We have now been joined by our associate producer Jacob
and middle linebacker extraordinaire.
Probably the biggest football fan in this house.
I would say he's the biggest football fan in the house.
Yeah, like he loves all things football, knows a bunch of stats, can read. I was watching him at flag football yesterday because really conveniently they moved the games to the middle of the workday, and
his were later. His were like at nighttime, 7 p.m. whatever.
Yes, so I got to go to the end of it after one of my classes and saw him as quarterback going to make a pass, and where he was going to make the pass was not open, and then he almost got sacked, and he read the field
in flag football.
And then he read the field and threw it down the other way, and he has a football brain, and I never would have guessed that before.
He really does. He's like kind of a very intellectual football player.
Right. So when he heard we were doing this, he snuck his way in here and was like,
he was like, wait a minute, I heard the F word.
Yeah, the F word, the football word. Can I be in here? So here he is. So I think before the break, we were talking about our story and we never really finished it. So then our oldest joined football.
Yes.
And I will say that it was hard because it was the end of summer. So it was really hot. And it was 5 days a week at that point. When you start, it's 5 days a week. Mm-hmm. Until the school year starts, until the football games start. Mm-hmm. So 5 days a week, about 2 hours a day, lots of running, which he had been playing baseball for a long time and basketball, but had never run for this much. And he would run by us in his helmet and a mouth guard for the first time.
Yeah.
And he and the other boys, a lot of them would be crying.
Yeah.
And that was really hard for me as a mom, but he had wanted to play. He had asked for this. He had begged for this. We had researched it. So we let him do it. And he got to a point where he actually asked us to quit.
Yeah.
So that the tables were reversed. And sort of then I felt like as much as I wanted to take his hand and quit football, I said, I really think that you need to see how it feels to play a game first. Mm-hmm. So I really don't think you can quit right now.
Hold out until the first game.
I want you to wait one more week because it was sort of right before the games were going to start. I want you to wait one more week. I want you to see what it feels like to play in a game. And then if after the game you really don't want to play, all right, I'm happy to quit.
Right. And you gave it a valiant effort. you know?
And you figured out what it was. And then he never, ever, ever asked to quit again, because that first game day was beautiful. It was a home game. It was sunny. There wasn't a cloud in the sky.
You heard his name announced.
Their names got to get announced. I don't even remember if he really even played, but he had so much fun and has never asked to quit, has never complained about practice again. And Jacob, you kind of had a similar experience too. You would cry your first year. You actually started a year earlier because you got to have all that time being at football practice. You knew what it was going to be like. So you got, as like the younger brother, you would go and watch for years. And so you knew what it was all about, and you wanted to quit as well too. And then your first game, you scored a touchdown on a QB sneak.
Yeah.
And then I think you were hooked from then too. And now, I just paid tuition for this year's football and wanted to be like, are we sure no one wants to quit? I don't really want to pay this money. But they are fully committed, and Josh has now become a coach. And so we are all in as a football family. So, and I never, ever, ever would have thought that we would be, nor would I ever think that we would be sitting here defending the sport of youth tackle football. So tell us what these myths are.
Well, I think we're defending the sport from the parent's choice. We're defending the parent's choice from our perspective.
Right, from our.
The show is called Changing Perspectives, and we're not trying to change how you feel. We're just trying to give you a different perspective, maybe.
Player's perspective.
Oh,
and a player's perspective of a youth football player.
Yes, and I have to say we've been fortunate. There haven't been any injuries to our kids. No concussions, no lots of hitting or anything like that have called it into question. But we might feel differently if that were the case.
Of course. So what we're going to do is go through basically a list that was put out by the NFL, actually. You can find this on operations.nfl.com. We'll share that again at the
So it's a little biased.
It's a little biased. It comes from the vice president of something, Troy Vincent. I forget his title, but he put this out, tweeted it out. And this is in response to, all of the hype in the news these days about folks choosing to not let their kids play because of the risk of injury, risk of concussion. You had the Will Smith movie that came out a couple of years ago. We got a lot of folks, news stories, news articles about former NFL players coming out and denouncing it because of their injuries. Junior Seau, that whole thing with his family, with the CTE. And so it's really in people's minds. But the sport is changing, and that's what I wanted to sort of start off with as a coach. From when I played to when my kids currently play, the sport is very, very different. And that's just, again, coming from our perspective, our experiences. Anyway, so this is going to be this is ripe for tangents for me because I love this topic so much. So I apologize ahead of time. Jenny is looking at me like with daggers. She's like, shut up and keep going. Right?
Well, and stop saying
okay. See, when you roll your eyes at me, I think you're not happy with what I'm saying. I don't know that it's about what are those words called? Filler words.
I was gonna say
those are the ums are filler words. So I can't tell that you're telling me to cut the ums out.
You couldn't read my lips that were saying stop saying
No.
We need to have a sign
that I
can hold up.
Like you were like, stop vamping and keep going.
Okay, can you stop vamping and keep going now?
I wasn't vamping.
You are now.
Okay. All right. So myth versus fact, again on operations.nfl.com. Myth number 1. Let's see what you guys think about this. The risk of injury with youth football is higher than any other sport. What do you think?
Well, based on our anecdotal experience,
yes,
I have found the opposite to be true. That I feel more worried, especially, you know what worries me the most in youth sports for our experience? When one of our kids is on the mound in baseball pitching. And as they got older, the fear of a batted ball coming back at them and hitting them in the chest, which has killed kids, and which has knocked kids out. Last summer at a baseball tournament, we saw a kid, a 12-year-old, get knocked out cold. Were you there, or you were running the tournament? So I don't know if you saw it.
I don't think I saw it.
I don't think you saw it. So I don't remember.
Knew about it, obviously.
It was a rundown. It was something about the runner and the catcher and the first baseman. I don't remember the details, but the kid, I was sitting right there, and he got knocked out.
Was it a batted ball?
No, it was. I think it was a collision.
Oh, okay, all right.
And
I thought you said it was a batted ball back to the pitcher.
That's what scares me. And then I went on a tangent because I suddenly remembered that.
Excuse me, I thought tangents weren't allowed.
No, other tangents. Wow, you two are just really laying into me tonight. I walked in here and Jacob was like, Mom, why do you always cut off Dad? So, all right. I don't know what I was saying now. I was saying...
But you saw a kid get knocked out in baseball.
Not passed out. So seeing kids got taken out in ambulance, seeing broken bones in flag. Two of the most horrific injuries that haunt me sometimes, those screams that you never forget. One was a baseball injury and the other was the other was a flag football injury, which I think was a broken wrist. But you then realize how far away the ambulance is when you're sitting there waiting for an ambulance. But so for us, anecdotally, football has been kind of a safer sport because they're fully padded. They're taught how to take a hit. They're taught how to fall. They're taught safely how to play the sport. And is it an aggressive sport? Sure, absolutely. Of course it is, yeah.
So the NFL responded to that myth with a couple of facts. The first one is the concussion rate in youth tackle football is similar to concussion rates in other youth contact sports such as soccer, ice hockey, lacrosse, and even flag football, which we've already discussed as a part of our personal experience. We've absolutely seen that.
Yeah, and I read an article recently that I think I shared with you that actually the data is showing that flag football is more dangerous than tackle football in terms of injuries and concussions, because when kids come out in flag football for a suspected concussion, they go back in too quickly. Whereas opposed to youth tackle, you as a coach have to go through sort of a concussion protocol.
We're going to talk about that at the end, actually.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
That's okay.
And then there's sort of a protocol before a kid can go back in. Whereas in flag and some other sports, the data is starting to show that the kids get sent back in too quickly. So do the football players, the sort of NFL players that we're seeing now with CTE, is that a result of their youth sports level? Yeah, probably. Mm-hmm. I tend to think it's probably more college level and high school level, and then actual professional level, NFL level. But they grew up in an era where I think we didn't have as much focus on concussions as we do now. So I don't necessarily think we're sending our kids into that same sort of football future.
The other fact that the NFL lists here in response to that first myth is varsity high school football players from 1956 to 1970 did not experience an increased risk of developing neurodegenerative diseases compared with athletes engaged in other varsity sports. So what basically they're saying is there wasn't a difference.
What about after 1970?
I don't know.
Okay, so there's a missing data set there. Remember, I haven't seen that.
I also want to say that on each of these facts that the NFL put out in this list, they list studies. They cite a bunch of different studies. We're not going to cite them because we haven't looked at them. And so I don't want to...
But they're in the original source document.
Yes. So please go ahead. We're going to shout out the website again at the end. We'll keep doing it. Operations.nfl.com, myth versus fact, and you'll see all those studies listed so you can check them out for yourselves. Jacob, do you have anything to add on that one?
I do not.
All right. Should we go on to myth number 2?
Mm-hmm.
Myth number 2. There are long-term mental health and cognitive function effects of playing tackle football during high school. What do you think about that?
I would say maybe.
Maybe.
Depending on the level of concussions and head injuries.
Right. So
it's a possibility.
Right. What I want to say, I think, and I've said this many times in my discussions with folks, there are, families in town that often ask me questions because they know I'm a coach and we have experience. They know that our family's involved in football. And what sometimes what I'll say is, we don't have any, I feel like and it's true. I'm trying to be very politically correct about it, but it's true that we don't have any data from the current game, right? With the current equipment and the current method with which we teach tackling and all that. We don't have any data.
Because it's still so new.
So
we don't have any
new.
long-term effects. Listen,
right.
That was kind of also the defense of vaping when e-cigarettes came out. Nobody had any long-term results then. And guess what? Turns out they're kind of worse than cigarettes. So
right.
I hear what you're saying. That's true. I think we also have to be prepared to be willing to say we don't have any long-term data.
So it could go either way.
It could go either way. And so as parents, we are taking a risk. As parents, though, I would also argue I take a risk when I put my kids on a school bus and I send them to school, or I send them off to the park on their bike, or I let them jump on a trampoline, or I let them get on an airplane with us. Everything is a risk, and I can't put them in a bubble. And we as a couple, as a parenting unit, and with our kids, based on what they want to do, we've made the decision, okay, it's worth the risk. You guys really want to play. There's a lot of safety precautions that are being taken. And, if there's concussions that are happening, then we're going to pull you. We're going to have a conversation about pulling you.
Well,
so what was the original question? About the high school athletes?
There are long-term mental health and cognitive function effects of playing tackle football during high school.
If you look at like a high school quarterback who maybe gets sacked every Friday night 4 or 5 times, doesn't have a good line protecting him.
I think they need a new O-line.
If maybe the O-line's not good and he keeps taking hits, and he's taking hits to the head, or a running back who keeps taking hits to the head, there's definitely a possibility that if he does that for 4 years through his high school career,
the risk
that
is
he's going to have some. And so as his parent at that point, that would be a conversation I'd want to have before it gets to that point. So is that a myth? No, I think that's probably a fact.
Well, let me say
I
what the
could probably
fact
find
is.
data to support that.
Well, the fact that they use to respond to that myth here in the article, there are no differences in cognitive function or depression when comparing football athletes to non-contact sport athletes and to non-athletes. And they have cited a specific academic study, an abstract on that topic. When there was a study of 4,000 high school students into their 60s and 70s, comparing 834 who played football with 1,858 who played non-contact sports or no.
But these were people that were in their 60s, so they played football a long time ago.
A long time ago,
right?
Yeah.
So, like high school athletes right now, we don't know what their outcomes are going to be 20 years from now because we don't live in the future. So we don't know.
Exactly. We don't know.
Our hope is that with better equipment, better padding, better, more sort of advanced technology in helmets, better sort of training at the youth level, that we are decreasing those sort of risks.
Right.
And I would hope at the college level, sort of NCAA level, which really worries me. Like, I'm more worried about my kids being college athletes in a D1 school with the sort of NCAA rules. I'm more worried about.
Sounds like a different episode.
Yeah, that's a different episode.
Yeah,
you have to watch
NCAA.
that documentary that I watched to be able
Tell
to.
everybody, what is it called again?
I don't remember because I forget.
I can look it up.
It's called. It was free on the plane when we were flying somewhere, and I watched it and was horrified. It followed 3 D1 athletes of different.
Was it the TV show we watched, QB1?
No, it wasn't a TV show. It was a documentary.
QB1's a great show on Netflix, though. QB1. I think it's on Netflix.
QB1 follows high school quarterbacks as they're sort of trying to make it to a D1 school. This was a documentary about D1 athletes and sort of
student athlete?
It might be student athlete. How the basically the colleges take advantage of them, and that their outcomes after college are really poor if they don't make it to the professional level, because they essentially have worked their entire college career for nothing.
I think it's student athlete. It was on HBO.
I think it was HBO.
Yeah, you liked it a lot.
I did. So we should watch. You should
check
watch
that
that,
out.
and we can have a conversation about
We
it.
can
So,
do an
anyways,
episode.
I'm tangential tonight. I worry more about
You
that.
are?
I am. Mhm. I worry more about that.
Jake, did you have a point that you wanted to make on that one? I can't remember.
When she was talking about like taking risks, I never thought of it that way.
About what way? Like it being risks?
Yeah,
like
everything. Basically, everything is a risk. Honestly.
yeah, everything is a risk. Yeah, it's all about kind of weighing those risks, right?
So again, if you want to check out the study that the NFL used to respond to that myth, check out the website. Myth number 3 on this list. Are you ready? Okay.
Yes. Sorry, I nodded my head.
You nodded your head.
Nobody
No
can
one
hear
can
me.
see that. No one can hear that. There are long-term brain injury effects of playing tackle football before high school. That's myth number 3. What do you think about that one?
I think it's probably similar to my answer to question 2 is maybe if you're a kid who has a lot of concussions, if you're a kid who's got like 7 concussions in your youth football career,
right?
You shouldn't still be playing football. Then maybe you do have some long-term impacts there.
So I think it's, again, every child is different. Yeah, I guess maybe. But I think, again, there's no real data right now to support that. Let me say what the facts are that the NFL lists here. Okay, so just to, again, let me state the myth. There are long-term brain injury effects of playing tackle football before high school. So fact, there are no differences in neurocognitive function between those who started playing football before versus after age 12, even after adjusting for age, learning accommodations, and concussion history. That's the first fact.
Does it say where that was from?
That's from a study of 3,500 collegiate football athletes from 2014-2018.
Okay, so that's recent data.
Much more recent.
So so that's a data. So I am a data junkie, and
I like data too. Yeah.
I'm always going to sort of look at what's the quality of the data. Are we talking about like 9 people who, like a lot of the research on CTE, is based on families who were concerned about their loved one who was a former football player.
Yep.
And then after death, they pursued research into their brain. And so it's only looking at the brains of individuals who had concerning behaviors. There's no control. And so not to dispute what is being found.
Right.
We can't then apply that to every football player. And so often when we're looking at data and how it's presented in the media, people aren't asking that question. They're not saying, where's the data from? How many people were in that sample? What was the year? Who did it? What's the controlled sample size there? And so I'm going to ask those questions.
Right.
Because I think that's important.
They also list another fact. This seems to be looking at older data. It says high school students who played American football from 1946 to 1956 experienced no increased risk of developing dementia, PD, or ALS compared with non-football playing high school males, despite poorer equipment and less regard for concussions compared with today.
Here's what I have to say about that.
Yeah,
I think that's useless data.
I think that's useless data.
And so I think actually the NFL including that data, sort of is an even smaller print there. Like, here's the fact, and then here's the data it's from, the study it's from.
Those are 2 facts they list.
Okay.
For that one.
But then, so they list the fact, but then when they actually explain the study, is it smaller font or anything?
Yes.
Yes. See, so it's this little, remember, I haven't looked at this. There's this sort of dishonesty that's out there in a lot of studies or a lot of articles that are meant to sort of skew you one way or another. Here's a fact, and we're putting it out there as if we're talking about all high school players, when really they're talking about a subset from 1940 and 1950. Right,
and that was from a study from the Mayo Clinic published in 2012. That specific one about the 1946 to 1956.
Okay. So it's a recent study, but it's looking at
Right.
data from football in a world that we don't live in right now.
Right, with equipment and technique that is completely different.
Totally.
And I think the first fact makes a lot more sense and is more applicable to this, to where we are now.
Okay.
And football reality. Okay, want to go to the next myth?
Sure.
There's actually only two more. It's only a
I
list of
assumed there was
5.
like 10. Oh, okay.
No. All right, myth number 4. High school football injuries are at an all-time high. What do you think about that?
I mean,
That's interesting.
high school football is not that different from youth football, so the injury rate wouldn't just go up because it's high school now.
Except kids are bigger and faster, and you can have heavier kids in high school football
But so
because of the weight. Like
Well, that's
youth football, there's this weight limit.
only in certain parts of the country.
Not
there's
Pop
weight.
Warner. We don't do Pop Warner.
No. There's a lot of youth football programs that don't have a weight limit. However, depending on your size, you might be able to only play a certain division or a certain position or something like that. So,
in the youth football program that our kids are in,
Yes,
you have
there
to
is
be
a weight
under
limit.
a certain weight limit. But then
and
when
that's
you
all
get
about
to
safety.
But then when you get to high school, you could be a 500-pound lineman.
Right.
Right. So I was going to say, to your point, Jacob, like, why would there suddenly be a difference in injuries? I would say because they're bigger and perhaps they're running faster. But what was the myth?
High school football injuries are at an all-time high.
I'm going to actually say no, because I feel like there are now, well, I'm thinking back to high school. There was like an athletic like trainer, like a physical therapist that was always at the games, right? For injuries.
Well, yeah,
when we were in high school.
there's a team trainer and then of course an ambulance.
An ambulance. That was always there when we were in high school. I feel like maybe now there's more of a propensity to not push kids to play through pain. I don't really have any data to support this. I'm just kind of thinking that because there's more of a heightened focus, it's probably not at an all-time high. I don't know. What's the answer?
All right, so the fact that they list here to respond to that myth is the National Federation of High Schools report that the rule changes, injury detection, so that's a good point, Jenny, and education have resulted in the lowest risk of injury in high school football history.
Yeah, so like coaches are now
so
more
your
aware
gut
of what
was right on target there.
Yeah. Sometimes I'm smart. I mean, it makes sense, right? There's more training, I think, for the coaches. There's more responsibility for the coaches to not allow kids to get injured. And so now they're seeing injuries quicker and pulling kids out, kind of rehabbing them, getting them off the field, and not returning them until it's safer.
Right, exactly.
And I think and I also think we live in a digital age now, so parents can also sort of Google things, and it's easier to see it seems now that it's easier to kind of find doctors that sort of specialize in this thing.
Right.
And, so I guess
I
believe that.
Especially with concussions, there's specific rules with regards to returning as well. So, and detection is a big piece of that. And I think that definitely is a myth for sure. Okay. So myth number 5. Do you have anything else on that list? Myth?
No.
Okay. So the final myth in this list here that you can find again on operations.nfl.com is football players don't do well in school. What do you think about that one, Jacob?
I honestly am quite offended.
Nice.
You're offended by that?
Oh, man. So middle linebacker, Jacob, you are probably one of the most physical positions on the field, right? So you take a lot. It's very physical, very aggressive. You're also on the line as well. You played center this past year. So, but do you do good in school?
Do you do well in school?
Do you do well in school?
Unlike your father.
Unlike me.
Clearly did good.
Yeah, I did good. do well in school?
I do.
You do well in school. We know that. So the fact that the NFL list here says NCAA statistics show that football student athletes perform better in the classroom and have higher graduation percentages than the general population. What do you think about that? Careful now.
What?
I think I know where you're going. What do you think about that?
Where do you think I'm going with that?
I don't know.
You just said you think I know. You know where I'm going.
Why don't you go there,
All right,
and then I'll let you know.
So the NCAA says that? Based on what?
Yes. I don't know.
And are we talking college graduation or high school graduation? Are we talking high school or college?
I assume college.
Because I also kind of feel passionately about this because we watched that show that I totally forget the name of it. With Ollie.
Last Chance U.
Last Chance U.
Love that show. And
right?
Another Netflix shout out. Check out Last Chance U if you're a football fan.
Well,
even if you're not a football fan.
But it's also kind of really devastating, and I think really paints the picture of what college football is really like for student athletes. And it kind of raises the question of, do student college athletes, particularly football athletes, get sort of pushed ahead in school? Are their professors, are their teachers encouraged to sort of pass them so that they can continue to play? Because the obvious answer here is, well, if they don't have good grades, they can't play.
Right.
But a lot of sort of the undercurrent is, well, they only have to take sort of easier classes. So of course they're going to get good grades.
Yeah.
And or they've got all this extra tutoring support to make sure they get good grades. And or teachers are sort of turning a blind eye and, passing them when they shouldn't be. That show Last Chance U is students who essentially made mistakes or had academic problems at a D1 school.
Right.
And they lost their position at the D1 school and then had to go to essentially a community college where they were tasked to get their grades up and continue working on their football skills and try to get redrafted to a good school, a good D1 school.
Readmitted.
Well, often it was to a different school, though.
Right.
Yeah, readmitted to a different D1 school. And they had to sort of, because of NCAA rules, sort of take a break and all that stuff. Really heartbreaking to see their struggle. And it does sort of make it look like for some of those students, maybe they were kind of passed along. So I guess I question the validity of this data.
Right. Well,
I've gone all off track here.
I think that maybe in the past, years and years and years ago, maybe there was an evidence of pushing students through to get good grades. But I think that nowadays the NCAA rules are so strict and enforced, and it starts in high school. I mean, I know amazing student athletes who weren't able to participate in their high school sport because of grades, and that's a real thing that happens, and people may not think that happens. People may think that students, superstars, studs are just pushed through, and they're not these days. I think that's probably true at multiple levels.
And as a college professor, I have never been asked to sort of turn a blind eye to like any of my athletes for their grades or anything like that. And there were standards. They had to hold, have a certain GPA to continue to play.
Right.
And if they had to miss a class because of a game or because of traveling, it wasn't like an automatic excused absence. It was still
have to make it up.
Still have to make it up. And it still counts just the same as if you like blew off the class and didn't go. Jacob, you were going to say something.
Yeah. So in the show Schooled, it's based in the 90s. There is a class to have football players pass easily, and are there still classes like that?
Say it again. I'm confused. In
the show Schooled.
Oh, in the show Schooled, which is a spin-off of the Goldbergs.
Okay.
That's right. They do talk about it's set in the 90s, and one of the episodes sort of talks about how there's a class that the football players have to take.
Yeah.
And they make it easy. Could that be something that still happens somewhere?
Maybe.
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think probably is.
Could it be something that happens?
There's a possibility.
Possibly.
Right.
Okay. What was the actual myth there? Because I got all...
Football players don't do well in school.
Oh, yeah. I just think that's that's false. There's
You know.
Yeah.
Well, it depends on what, like, not everybody's perfect in school. And,
Right.
like, it might just be a coincidence for someone who's not perfect in school to play football.
I think there is that stereotype, especially from when we were in high school, that like football players are dumb and they like, you know, they just take a lot of hits and so they're not smart. They like eat their spoons. Like, they're like, they just, you know, they're big dumb oafs. Well, and I think there still is that stereotype, but I feel like that's changing, and I don't feel like that stereotype exists so much now.
And you can't really apply generalities to any of these types of myths or situations or facts.
So, does this list have myths? Is this list missing myths that you thought it would have? I just asked that in a really backwards way.
No, I don't know. I think that maybe I was expecting it to be a little longer, and specifically address what is happening at the youth football level to prevent injury.
Yeah, and
it really didn't.
It kind of feels to me a little bit like smoke and mirrors.
A little bit,
like maybe. A little bit. Yeah, I thought it was going to be a big kind of strong argument about how youth tackle football is really no less safe than youth soccer or playing baseball or going to the playground.
They made that point really at the beginning. That was the first myth was probably the best one, I think, and the most applicable, the most what we have experienced as what we've seen. You know, we've as we've already discussed and explained, we've seen worse injuries in other sports as sports parents. I wanted to highlight first the American Academy of Pediatrics. Now listen, there are all kinds of resources out there if you want to do your own research and Googling about youth football. If you're a parent out there who has a child that's interested in playing football, there's so many great resources out there, things you can do to educate yourself in this whole topic. I wanted to shout out a specific website that I just found called playsmartplaysafe.com, and it has a bunch of different things you can go to in this website: protecting players, advanced technology, medical research, sharing progress resources. There's a news section, and I wanted to highlight this section. News. I wanted to highlight this section. They talk about the policy statement that the American Academy of Pediatrics have put out there, and this sort of sums this up for me as a coach. It says, I'm going to read from this. It says, quote, delaying the introduction of tackling until a certain age may reduce the risk of injury for ages when tackling is prohibited. But this could lead, it's a big but.
So it could reduce some injury.
Yes.
But
this could lead to even higher rates of injury when tackling is later introduced if players have their first tackling experiences when they are older, stronger, and bigger. It's this paradox, said pediatrician Greg Landry in the same release, that it makes it so important for leagues to teach proper tackling technique and skills to avoid and absorb tackles, even if no tackling occurs throughout the seasons. And that sort of sums it up for me as a coach and a parent.
So, sorry, Jacob has to say something.
Because say one league doesn't, like one youth league doesn't teach tackling yet, and say two leagues combine later on, and the league that combined with the league that doesn't know how already learned how to tackle, it'll be a way big difference, and it'll just be completely unfair.
Right, and
dangerous, right?
And
like
dangerous.
If you don't start so a lot of parents will say, I'm not going to let my kids play football until high school. That's, for me, really scary because they're big and they're fast in high school, and if you let them start when they're like 8, their hits are really nothing, but they learn how to give a proper hit and take a proper hit, so that then when they're on a field and they're 16 years old and they've got this super fast giant kid running at them full speed, they know how to get out of the way. They know how to take the hit. They know how to sort of fall the right way. They know how to protect themselves.
Yeah.
And if you don't have that experience, that's a hard bridge. It feels to me like that's a hard bridge to sort of build there.
Right.
However, I am very intrigued by the new concept of flex football.
Hold that thought. We're going to take one more break.
Okay.
Before the end of the episode. We're going to finish everything up, and we will be right back.
Welcome to Cinemarks. If you have your tickets, take your seats. The show is about to begin.
You ever dance for the devil in the pale moonlight?
Every week, Troy Adams is joined by an array of nerdy podcasting co-hosts.
Hey, Mom! The meatloaf!
They discuss films and television from the past, present, and future. It's always something different on the slate.
Life is a box of chocolates, Forrest. You never know what you're gonna get.
It's always kept fun, spirited, and they attempt to be entertaining.
60% of the time, it works. Every time.
You can follow the Cinemarks on Twitter and Instagram at CinemarksPod.
Go ahead. Make my day.
The Cinemarks podcast is available on Wooshkaa, iTunes, Spotify, and most other podcasting platforms. We hope you enjoy the show.
Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul.
And we're back. Thank you for taking a break, Jenny. You didn't seem like you want to take an ad break, but you're going with it.
I don't know how I feel about ad breaks.
It's okay. All right. So you just were telling us about flex football.
Right. I'm very intrigued by this sort of new, what feels like a hybrid model. You know, I think a lot of people are saying, oh, let's ban tackle football. Kids can just play flag. And flag football is a completely different sport. Like the field is different. The plays
Completely
are different. The
sport.
rules are different. There's no
contact.
fourth downs. There's no contact. It's a completely different sport. It's like saying let's ban tackle football and have kids build engines. Totally different things. Totally different things. Not a great analogy.
Couldn't think of one, huh?
It's like saying let's ban tackle football at the youth level and have kids play basketball. Okay, that's another option, but it's not the same sport. And it's not going to prepare you for high school football because it is a different sport. It's like saying basketball is going to prepare you for high school football. Totally different sport. And so this flex football really does sort of feel like an alternative to tackle football. Same rules.
Yeah.
Some padding. There's no tackling. There's contact. And you're working on all of the principles of football, but there's no tackling. It's a lot of like what practices are like at sort of the professional level without tackling. I'm very intrigued by that. And quite honestly, if there were a flex football league around us that was comparable in terms of like, oh, you're shaking your head.
No,
I would be interested in having. I would be interested in having that conversation.
I mean,
and exploring it.
If tackle was gone, then I'd go to flex, but it's not.
Yeah,
your preferences.
Absolutely.
That's still your and so I let you make that decision right now, like as a family. If, however, you or your brother started having concussions or injuries that were concerning, then there would be a point where, as a parent, I would say, enough is enough. We're not doing this anymore.
What are the options? And
so flex is, I'm very intrigued by that. And I'm curious to see what happens with that as a sort of league over the next 5 years or so.
Much like flex football, as you were just describing to us, there are things that organizations and leagues are doing throughout the country that they're making adjustments to the game in an effort to prevent a banning of tackle football. There are things
what kinds of changes?
Like a smaller playing field.
What does that do?
I don't think it. I don't think that would work for the league that I coach in and you guys play in.
I guess it means you can't have as many like breakaway runs that go like, 40 yards down the field and then result in potentially a bigger tackle,
and I guess
right?
that the theory there too is why that same idea is why there are some leagues that don't do special teams anymore. So no kickoff, no return team.
That's the best part.
Yeah, Jacob likes that part of the game.
No kickoff, no return. Oh wait, our league, didn't they try to take that away?
There was talk on it at the younger level.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing, adjusting some of the rules for the younger ages too, like that. There's some leagues that are toying with taking away the 3-point stance, a body position that allows for great leverage and more power off the line. So the thought is, when you're in a 3-point stance, you can fire off pretty powerfully. And if you're not in a 3-point stance, it won't be as dangerous, I guess, so to speak.
So you guys, Jacob, your team faced a team this last season that didn't do a 3-point stance, right?
Yeah, I don't think that
wasn't
why,
a safety
though.
thing. Oh, okay.
Well, you know what?
I know what you're talking about.
I was shaking my head because I didn't think this was applicable. I think you might be onto something, because I think Pop Warner is doing that.
And they used to be a
Pop Warner team.
But
so
how would you do a snap if there's no 3-point stance?
it's different for the center.
All right.
Different for the center.
But that's so weird.
So
I
guess when I watched that game, I was like, what are they doing? They're trying to get in the kids' heads. But now I think it probably was a holdover from their Pop. They were a different league. They also had a coach. They also had a team mom.
Yeah.
Not teen, a team mom, which I know is a Pop Warner thing where there's like a mom who's on the bench with the kids, who's sort of there in a sort of nurturing role, it seems like, sort of like their cheerleader, but also making sure everyone has their water and everyone's sort of being taken care of. And I really like that concept. I don't think it's
coddling. Why does it have to be team mom?
Team parent. It could be a parent, but not a coach.
Not a coach.
Right, not a coach. Separate adult person. And you know this from coaching little kids. You could have 7 coaches. All of you are watching the game and, thinking about like who's going to get in next. And to have someone who's not a coach, who's there on the sidelines with you, that could be sort of taking care of the kid. Anyways, I'm saying, I think that leagues can learn some good things from other leagues.
Yeah. With football, there's so much going on, and so the coaches, you're right, even if it's like a gigantic coaching staff, we're all focused on different things. There's a lineman coach, linebacker, defensive coordinator, offensive, whatever.
Right.
And so, that's a really good point.
Jacob was going to say something.
Go ahead, Jacob.
Would you be able to do a 4-point stance?
I don't know. I'm not familiar with that.
You'd probably get the same power if you do that than 3-point stance.
Right. I would assume that no. I mean, it's a stand-up position.
So
probably.
Just do like if you're an end.
Yeah, exactly.
So this is interesting, because here we are talking about change, and change is hard from a sort of human perspective, and our inclination so often when someone says, we're going to take this thing you've done for your entire life and we're going to change it. Our inclination is to be like, what? No. I kind of just had that reaction as I was listening to you read that. Yeah. And now that I'm sort of processing that and digesting it, I'm thinking, okay, why not? Like, let's look at the data on that. Are there studies that are showing that there's less injury there? Like, what's the impact then at the high school level? Right. These, I think, are interesting conversations to have. I think these are more useful conversations to have than the conversation that's being held in Massachusetts right now, which is, let's just ban it all together. That doesn't seem like a very good use of our time. Good use of our time. It doesn't seem. It just doesn't.
It's very
seem,
absolute. There's no discussion, right?
It's not a discussion. It's just we're going to ban this, and you can't make your own decision for your own kids, and your kids can't make their own decisions. Rather than, let's really evaluate the sport of youth tackle football and see what different leagues are doing, what changes are helping, what the data shows, what the research shows, rather than kind of shaming parents and saying, you're a terrible parent if you allow your kid to play tackle football.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what the message is on the other side.
It's absolutely what the message is. And also then the question is, why don't you just let your kids play something else? Well, because this is what they want to play, and they've learned so many important lessons. So I think instead of maybe shaming other parents and saying you're a horrible parent for letting your kid play youth tackle football, maybe these are the kinds of conversations to be having instead. Approach them from a place of curiosity. Tell me why you decided it's okay to let your kid play youth tackle football. Why are you not concerned? What in the data, what in the research makes you feel a little safer about your kid being allowed to play? I feel like that's a better conversation to have than you're a horrible parent, and so we're going to take this option away and not let you make that decision. It's very kind of black and white, and I tend to not be a very black and white person, and I think the world we live in is not very black and white, and I often say to my patients, so much of our life is really spent living in the gray, and we want to sort of be black and white because that would make it easier, right? It'd be easier if there was like a right and a wrong, and that was it. But really, we're in that space between black and white, which is, I call it living in the gray.
Right.
So I think that's kind of where youth tackle football needs to go, it needs to stay sort of in this gray area. It's not bad. It's not all bad. It's not all good. Is there area for improvement? For sure. So let's have those conversations. There is. But also, so folks on the other side, I guess on our side, I think also can tend to be a little bit too black and white and firm in their stance too, and say like, no, it's fine. Everything's fine. It's fine. It's the greatest sport ever. Nothing's wrong with it.
Right.
There's got to be some room to say, maybe we do need to change things a little bit.
I think there's always room to grow. And just to circle back to some of the changes that are being made, some leagues out there are putting players of equal size matched up against each other. There's weight restrictions. There's always been weight restrictions in some leagues, but some put certain players, restrict certain players from playing in certain divisions based on weight. Players must rotate positions rather than specialize in just one. And you had mentioned this a little earlier, and this is happening at all levels, college, professional, where practices, full contact practices are limited, if not completely eliminated at certain points during the season. Where we do helmets only one night. We reduce one of the days of practice, and so once we get going in the season, we reduce the frequency with which we have contact during practices. And sometimes we only have really one day that we dedicate to, okay, today's like hit day. We're going to work on our tackling technique and blocking technique. A lot of the other days are focused on play design and that kind of stuff, running through the different schemes and everything.
Right. And I think people tend to think, who've never done it, would think, wow, Jenny said there's 5 days a week of practice, 2 hours a day. And they would envision kids just knocking heads
over and
over again for 2 hours. And that is not at all what it is. And let me be real. Have I seen some pretty hard hits in a football game or at a practice? For sure. And football is the only sport that I always make sure one of us is at the practice, because there could be an injury. I don't do that for baseball. I don't do that for basketball. Don't do that for lacrosse. It's a little different because you coach some of these, but if one of us is not able to be at a football practice, we make sure that there's someone else who's there in our place as a just in case. You
say that right, but is it just in case? Again, we've explained that for our family, we've seen worse injuries in other sports.
But nothing. I don't want to say nothing bad has ever happened. Last season, Jackson did take there were a couple hard hits. In one
2 seasons ago.
No, it was this past season.
Okay. Oh, yeah, that's right.
Because I watched it. It was a practice. And so he then sat out the rest of the practice with his helmet off. Oh, yeah. And his head did hurt him. And so that's why I was there, because if they didn't pull him out, I was going to go march out there and pull him out. Right. And actually, he pulled himself out too. He said to the coach that he wasn't feeling good. And so that happens, and that's a risk. But also, our oldest has been on throwing restriction from a baseball injury for a year now. Not a football. Like the biggest injury in his life has come from baseball, and not from taking a cleat to the face or anything like that. It's from just kind of throwing the ball. And we didn't ever put him in like an AAU or travel league. At that point, we restricted him from pitching and still did all the right things. And he still wound up with a pretty significant injury that has had a pretty profound impact on him,
right?
Sort of globally. And so for him, his most dangerous sport so far has not been football.
Right.
And so we gladly, if he wants to play, we gladly allow him to sort of do that. And we put those precautions in place that sort of make us feel better. And we monitor that and, continue to sort of read research and have these conversations.
Exactly. And there are, like Ed mentioned, innovative ways with which you teach contact and tackling and limitations in practice. And there's different things leagues are doing to change the game and make adjustments. And the whole point is to still have players play this game and players learn this game and prepare them for the next level. And again, I'll go back to that American Academy of Pediatrics quote where it's basically you can ban tackling, but once they get to a level where there is tackling, they're not going to be as well prepared. Equipment improvements, again, technique improvements. And the other thing we're doing, I'm going to dive into this for just a moment. It won't be too long, I promise. But I wanted to say real quick, I don't necessarily believe in a lot of or agree with a lot of those adjustments being made to the game, like the 3-point stance thing and whatnot. But I think individual leagues, individual parents and players have to make the best decision for themselves, right? It's like gray area, like you had mentioned. It's not black and white. It's case by case. A lot of this stuff is a little bit subjective too. You have to go with whatever's going to make sense for your individual area and your league. And you meet the goals that you've set out there. You want to teach the kids the game. You want to foster a love of the game, and you want to prepare them for the next level in a safe way. One of the things that many, many, many leagues around the country are doing, in addition to our league, is requiring an online certification in concussion safety. And it's actually through the CDC, cdc.gov/heads-up. That's the website you can check out. But the training program is called the Heads Up Training Program. There's all kinds of amazing resources on that website. They've got all kinds of fact sheets for middle school athletes, high school athletes, coaches, parents, school officials, and they've got a concussion action plan. And so as football coaches, we have to go through this online training to be certified as Heads Up professionals, or Heads Up certified to understand the signs and symptoms and what to do and how to return players to the game. So again, that is something that many programs are requiring across the country.
Could parents do that?
Yes.
So I think parents should. I guess
it's free to take the course.
I've never have because I have you, and so you're always my concussion go-to person. How many times have you had to sort of tap into that concussion training in your involvement in other sports? Basketball, baseball, lacrosse.
Yeah, a fair amount.
A fair amount, right? Yeah. Like there's concussion risk there, or just kids falling off of bikes and things like that, colliding with each other. I was going to say something and then I forgot what it was going to be about, but it was about football. Clearly, I don't remember what it was. I've lost it. It was going to be like so profound. It was going to blow you out of the water, and I totally forget what it is. Sorry.
That's okay. I forgive you.
Maybe I'll remember and I'll post it on your page.
Yes. Yeah, that's a good idea. So just as a quick excerpt I wanted to share, the Heads Up action plan, the concussion action plan that you can actually print out and have as part of your like coaching binder, your coaching bag. And people, once you complete the program, you're encouraged to do so. And it gives you lists. It says if you suspect that an athlete has a concussion, you should take the following steps. Remove the athlete from play. I'm going to bring the mic a little bit over here so I can read it. Ensure that the athlete is evaluated by a healthcare professional and evaluating for a concussion. Inform the athlete's parents. Obviously, there's all kinds of steps here, and there's signs and symptoms that you look out for. Symptoms are reported by the athlete, signs observed by the coaching staff, and it goes through a list and reminds you. So these are the things that you learn in the online course, but then you've got this reminder sheet that helps you, sort of a resource document. And they've got a quote at the bottom. It says, it's better to miss one game than the whole season, right? And that's important to make sure that the kids don't return too soon. It's better to miss one game or two games than the whole season, or even more than that, right?
Oh, and that should not be just for football. That should be for,
absolutely,
for everything. Yeah. I actually have met with a new patient who is coming to me because of the impacts of a concussion from their youth, and it was not football concussion. Sort of the like emotional, mental impacts of a pretty significant concussion. So really important stuff to kind of keep in mind all the time. I remembered what I was going to say. It was about concussion baseline testing.
Yes.
So concussion baseline testing, when our oldest was going sort of through beginning stages of football, we had him have a baseline concussion test, which is basically kind of like a fun little computer test that we had him do through the pediatrician's office. And he couldn't do it until he was 10, I think, at that point. And now the American Academy of Pediatrics has lowered that beginning age, and now you can do it at the age of 8. So I think even if you're not playing football, if your kid is at all outside of their bubble and is playing with friends, riding a bike, playing on a playground, playing any sort of sports at that level, they should probably look into having a baseline concussion test so that if there ever is a concussion or a question of a concussion or a question of a head injury, you then know what your kid's baseline is, so that then when they go to do some testing, you know, have they lost some skills? Have they had some deficits as a result of that concussion? And that can guide you in your decision making about whether to allow them to return to the game. So ask your pediatrician, if you're a parent out there, ask your pediatrician about baseline concussion testing.
And if you're involved in coaching, or even you're just a parent out there, check out that website for the Heads Up Concussion Protocol. The other thing I wanted to say is I know our league is holding like an info night for parents and potential new parents to come out and ask questions and sort of, I guess, have like a myths versus facts discussion. And I encourage other leagues out there, if other folks are listening, to do just that. So
maybe you should just send the league this episode and have people listen.
Yeah. Well, listen, I want, this is an important topic. I posted, like I said earlier, on Instagram saying, hey, we're recording this episode tonight about youth football. Post your questions or comment and over here. There wasn't necessarily any questions or comments, but a lot of up likes on this one. And somebody on Instagram named Kimberly Spencer said, cheers to this. So I think this is an important topic. People are passionate about this. If either way, whatever side you fall down on, but I know that we are uber football fans, and I personally can't wait for the season to get started. Where are we? We're in early June, so we'll be on the football field in less than 2 months, Jacob, right?
Yes, sirree, Bob. Yes.
Do you have anything else to add for us tonight, Jacob?
No.
Thanks for joining us, Mr. Middle Linebacker. Coming into your 4th year, right?
Let's see.
This is your 4th season, I think.
4th.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, Jenny, anything else for us on this cool topic?
Please don't send us hate mail. You can do you. You can totally be against it. I totally support your right to be against it, and I totally support your right to think that we're horrible parents for allowing our kids to play tackle football, but let's allow people space to make those decisions. So absolutely don't take that choice away from parents in Massachusetts.
We're not going to yuck anybody's yum, right?
Oh, I hate that. That is the worst.
Well, listen.
Have you heard that before?
Yeah.
Oh.
We are.
You don't like it?
No.
We are pro. All right. Stop making fun of me.
No, he's making fun of me.
We are pro youth football in this family, and we've shared with you our experiences and our thoughts. And of course, we invite you to continue the conversation. Check out our Facebook page and all Instagram pages and everything. Drop us a line. Let us know what your thoughts are about this topic.
But don't drop us a hate mail.
Just don't drop us a hate mail. It's okay if you disagree with us, right?
Or send your hate mail to
speech.
Josh.
Yes.
Not to Jenny.
Okay. To Josh.
Send it to Dizzy Bird Studios, not Changing Perspectives. Yes.
All right. So I think that is going to do it for today, everybody. Thank you so much for listening. You can learn more on this topic by checking out that Myths versus Fact info sheet that the NFL put out. It's operations.nfl.com. Again, you can check out the cdc.gov website /heads up for the heads up concussion protocol, and operations, or I said that playsmartplaysafe.com for more information and for information on the policy statement from the American Academy of Pediatrics. Please go ahead and follow us on Facebook at Changing Perspectives Podcast and on Instagram at Changing Perspectives Blog. Lots of fun stuff coming up for Changing Perspectives. New episodes are released every Monday and Thursday. You can check out our website by going to changingperspectivesblog.com or send us an email to changingpodcast@gmail.com. Go ahead and subscribe to the show so you'll never miss an episode, and we will see you next time. Say bye, Jenny.
Bye, Jenny.
The Changing Perspectives podcast is produced, recorded, and edited by Dizzy Bird Studios, Whitman, Massachusetts. Visit Dizzy Bird Studios on Facebook, facebook.com/DizzyBirdStudios.